This is Tyrese Halliburton, and you're listening to Setting the Pace.
What is up, Pacer Nation? Welcome back to another episode here of your go-to Pacers podcast. And after a couple of days off, Mike Facci is back on the mic. Facci, what's up, brother? How you doing?
Mike on the mic. I'm back, feeling good, and it always feels good to have some stuff to talk about. Pacers Media Day just happened, which is like we've said before, like that just symbolizes training camp is right around the corner. It's next, and it's always good to see the boys back in uniform talking about the team. That's what really gets you excited.
Yeah, so I actually did a media day kind of like recap with Dustin Dopirak. So we're not going to redo all that, but Facci wasn't here, and there were some players we wanted to touch on that me and Dustin really didn't dive into. Guys we didn't hear from, like Delon Wright, like James Wiseman. Isaiah Jackson was somebody else that we didn't really talk too much about. I also want to touch on Jay Huff a little bit. Thought there was some interesting stuff that came out of practice on Wednesday from Rick Carlisle and Jay Huff himself, who spoke with the media after having a couple of days of training camp under his belt. But before we get into all of that, Facci, Myles Turner at Media Day for the Bucks continued to kind of double down on being appreciated and being in a city that loves him and all this stuff. And so there's a lot of fans that were really taken aback by this. And Myles Turner has been getting a lot of pushback, a lot of blowback for his comments, not only what he said in Vegas when he first got introduced to the Bucks, but what he had to say at Media Day. And since then, Myles Turner has actually addressed it on his Twitter account on Wednesday night. He said, "This quote has nothing, in all caps, to do with Indy fans and everything, in all caps, to do with my free agency experience." Facci, this is Myles Turner's first time really kind of being transparent about how he feels about the front office.
I think that's definitely true. I think when he talks about, quote, my free agency experience, clearly, clearly there was some disrespect, towards Turner. And I don't think we'll ever fully know the real story, but I think as time goes on, we're going to hear little bits and pieces of the truth coming out. But as it relates to that quote, look, we've talked about this, like Turner's offseason from a PR standpoint has been terrible. The comments that have come out have really rubbed Pacer fans incredibly wrong. And I think that he had to come out and say something, because there is a lot of people that supported him for 10 years in Indiana. And sure, everyone's quickest comeback is always, what about the trade rumors? What about this? Like, the fans don't put you in trade talks or anything like that. So, like, be specific, because when you say, and this was the quote, "I'm in a city now that wants to celebrate me." There's a great quote that says, "Go where you're celebrated." I feel like that's here. When you talk about a city, that feels a lot different than a front office. Mm-hmm. A city, to me, feels like the people that make up that city. And Turner's celebrated now before we hits the court, but what happens if they're not winning? How much is Turner going to be celebrated? Because I've seen some people say he could be a scapegoat next, to just be like, oh, what is this? This isn't what we thought we were paying for, or this or that. So, yeah, you're celebrated when you haven't even touched the court yet. But will you still be celebrated next year or the following? Will you still be in Milwaukee all those years later? You were in Indiana for 10 years. Treat the fans with class and everything like that, because those are the fans that are really going to remember you and your impact. The front office, hey, I guarantee you he does have a gripe with the front office, and I don't know how truthful he'll be in years to come, but I look forward to hearing more as time goes on.
Oh yeah, we'll hear something at some point, whether it's
he'll go on a podcast
post-career. It might be post-career that we actually hear the truth, because a lot of guys open up once their career's over, right? They want to play the political game and get their contracts and whatnot. But
did you hear Victor Oladipo recently? He was on a podcast. He was talking about, he was like, and the number always gets bigger as time goes on. He's like, I didn't actually get 160 million offered, but like basically he's like, the doctors told me I was recovering at the speed that I would be, everything would be well. I think Indiana knew that I wasn't. I had a couple good games. They got ahead of it. They traded me. And it just, the way that he seemed in there was just like, I don't know. Like, it just felt like a classic, like he knows his career is over with now and he's talking. We hadn't heard from him for years. I'm sure Turner one day he will be talking.
Yeah, I mean, I did not hear that about Victor Oladipo, so I'm glad you shared that. That's interesting. Victor is really trying to get back into the league, and I don't think there's anybody advocating more for him than Tom Crean, who is constantly posting things on his social media. But yeah, I just kind of felt like with the Myles thing, like Yeah, I was rubbed the wrong way when he kind of made those comments in Vegas. What he said recently to me wasn't that big of a difference. I kind of felt like it was just doubling down on what he's already said. But me and you probably are more familiar with Myles talking than a lot of people that maybe are new to the Pacers fan base here, because we've actually met a lot of people that said, I didn't start listening to you guys till the last couple of years when they made that run. But Myles, I think at the end of the day, Myles is a softie and he cares a lot about what people think about him
He
at
does.
the
He
end of the
really
day.
does.
And it's not being a bad thing to be a softie either. I just think that he really doesn't want to be perceived as the villain, because that's what I was like. Why is he, digging his heels in to be the villain of this whole situation?
Didn't feel
Like,
natural. Like, it was like, what are you doing? This isn't you. This isn't you. You were the
Yeah.
guy that deactivated his social media accounts numerous times in the past because of like any sort of like hate or trade rumors or this or whatever it may be. So I'm like, why is he making all of these comments? Because every comment, I don't know if they were getting twisted or he was just saying the wrong thing and just
That's his
didn't
problem.
realize it.
That's
It
his
was maybe
problem.
a little bit of both, but it was rubbing a lot of people that supported him for a long time the wrong way.
Yeah, and that is, sorry to cut you off there. I was just saying,
Yeah, good.
to me, that is his biggest problem, in my personal opinion. He gets himself caught up in talking that he doesn't realize what he's saying exactly. So I think that he's meaning one thing and then it comes out another way. It always seems to take a turn for the worse. And that's just
My wife
what
says I
just,
do it, so she's like, "Why didn't you just say that?" I'm like, "I don't think the same way you think. I don't know. Like, I just maybe sometimes I should think more before I speak, and maybe that's what Turner's doing. They're putting a mic in front of his face, and he's not thinking this through. And then afterwards, someone's like, "Yeah, you might want to clear up those comments." And by then, a lot of the damage is done.
Absolutely, Facci. Well, I'm really excited to talk about what we have to talk about today. We can kind of put the Myles Turner stuff behind us. I know that people are probably tired of hearing us talk about Turner. It's already October, and we're still talking about what took place at the end of June, early July. So it is probably time to kind of just move forward, and maybe we can discuss it again once that November 3rd game comes up in just a couple of weeks. But right now, there's a lot of things to touch on here. And before we get into all of the players that I had sent you that I want to talk on, I felt like the Jay Huff stuff today was probably some of the most fascinating stuff we heard from Rick Carlisle. So I'll just read a very brief synopsis of what Rick Carlisle had to say today about Jay Huff. He said, when he arrived to Indiana 3 weeks ago, he wasn't ready for Pacers conditioning requirements. He said it was a rude awakening, and he's really picked it up the last few weeks, and he's made great progress. He said the shooting is elite. He blocks shots. He's got great feel for the game, passes the ball well, and he's picking up the Pacers' defensive concepts, which are very difficult, and he thinks that he fits his culture perfectly. So obviously just Jay Huff coming into the camp, or coming into the last couple of weeks before camp started, really out of shape for how the Pacers require their players to be in shape. And if you look at Jay Huff, like, this isn't a guy that looks out of shape. Looks very thin and very slender and like just ready to go. But to me, that was really fascinating because they require so much of their players, Facci, when it comes to what they want to see them do conditioning wise. We hear about heat culture all the time. Pacers kind of have their own version of that, whatever they want to call it. So I just thought that was really interesting to me to hear him say that, but also just like the great feel that he can pass the ball well. And Jay even touched on that, said he can pass at times. He's not a Jason Kidd or anything special like that, but he can make the right read. And so I'll be curious to see how he kind of evolves in this system.
Yeah, I want to see these J Huff playmaking skills, but I also feel like Rick's not the type of guy to toss around the term elite, like elite 3-point shooter. Like, that sounds great. We've seen it
I put it
on.
in all caps.
Yeah, you got to put that in all caps for sure. You got to emphasize that. But we've seen on paper or a box score, hey, J Huff, yeah, he shot over 40% from three, but like, you still want to see it with your own eyes. When you hear it from Rick's mouth, you're like, okay, all right, you know what? If Rick's saying that, that's some high praise. So I also feel like for Pacers conditioning, yeah, you don't just like stumble into that. Like, that is something that's going to take time. And yeah, I think training camp's probably going to be one that hits him pretty hard. But I do think that it's exciting to know that like there's a lot to look forward to with Jay Huff. And I think this is a good center rotation that we heard all the centers talk about, and that they all do bring something different to the table. So I think that's great. But for Jay Huff, man, I couldn't be more excited about the opportunities he's getting, because this ain't Memphis. You're going to be running, all right. And I think that his skill set that he brings to the table is something that Indiana very much needs with the loss of Turner.
So when Jay Huff was actually talked to the media on Wednesday after practice, he said this. He said, "Gotta run fast, gotta run a lot. That's the Pacers' motto," which I thought was really like telling of what they are. He said, but he's getting comfortable as he goes, has been working with assistant coach Jim Boylan as his one-on-one coach, kind of doing some conditioning drills with him. He said that this is a fascinating part about his journey in his career. He hasn't been in the same training camp twice. So this is one of those things where it's like, okay, kind of familiar for him to be in different training camps, but he said that he loves the structure of this team. And one thing that he said that Rick Carlisle told him before camp started was they're going to make practice really hard so games are easier. And that to me is like, you know what? Like, that makes a lot of sense. You don't get a lot of practice time in the NBA anyway, so while you have this opportunity here in training camp, you might want to push it, 15, 20 times harder than what you would do through, a regular season game. And that to me is great that Jay Huff is kind of embracing all of this, and I'm hoping for the best. I think there's a lot of people excited about his potential.
A lot. I don't think there's anyone that could say anything negative about Jay Huff right now. He's just been like that. I don't know, the shiny new object, and it's just like, hey, I want to see more of that. Like, this is great. So there's a couple other players that we definitely want to touch on. I think it was really good to hear like an extensive format for like Isaiah Jackson or James Wiseman. Which one of those centers do you also want to talk about?
Yeah, let's talk about Ijax because I didn't grab a lot of notes from him. I know you went and did some research on that. So let's see what you had to say about Ijax.
Yeah, so he said he's feeling close to 100%. Gotta love that. I mean, he just hearing it from his mouth. I feel like a couple months ago, we were wondering, like, where is he at? We haven't gotten any updates. We knew we still had time to go, but to hear that he's feeling close to 100%, awesome. Says he does have his days from time to time where he feels just as athletic as he was before. Says the fellows are telling him that he's definitely just as athletic. And he has some other days where maybe he doesn't feel like as bouncy. But I feel like that's natural when you're coming off of an injury. There's that little, like a significant injury. There's that a little bit of doubt probably at times of like, am I myself? But I feel like he's got some reassurance from the fellows. Then this was also interesting. He said he put on quite a bit of weight. He said he actually took some off, but basically he's up 15 pounds right now. And a large part of that is muscle. So it's like Isaiah was always, while a physical big, probably a little bit on the not the thinner side, but we wouldn't call him husky by any means. To put on 15 pounds is like he's filled out just a little bit more, and I think that's going to help him when he's already physical. So I'm really excited about how he looks, how he feels. This feels like there's not going to be these limitations on Isaiah Jackson where, hey, he's not going to be ready by the start of the season or anything. Like, no, I'm sure they're not going to want to overdo it, but it definitely sounds like this is a guy who's been through 10 plus months of grueling rehab.
What was interesting to me was I believe it was Chad Buchanan and maybe even Rick Carlisle touched on it, but they don't really seem to kind of hold, and they're not planning on holding him back.
Yeah.
In terms of back-to-backs, he's kind of like a full go. So that'll be exciting to see. Carlisle did mention that when they've been playing their pickup games before training camp started, he's been getting a lot of run with that starting five group, but there is nothing guaranteed there in terms of, locked in, he's a starter. Like, it's an open competition. It's really Isaiah's to lose to a certain degree, but like he's going to get the first look, but it doesn't mean that it's, in lock, because if you listen to everything that Carlisle had to say about Jay Huff, it makes you think like this could be stylistically something that makes more sense and for Isaiah to come off the bench. But, I think if you saw Isaiah, I posted a picture of him from training camp, media day, where he was doing some stuff. He is just ripped. I mean, this guy is massive. You can tell
looking good.
He's put a lot of weight on it. He said he was 240, which he said is the way he feels most comfortable at to be able to play this season. Because if you're playing the five on a consistent basis and you're playing more minutes, you're going to have to be able to take some more of that heavier toll, right? It's just part of it. But I think the way the league is kind of moving to, Facci, we're starting to see more and more physicality, and we're seeing more and more teams play with bigger lineups. Like, the talk from media day was the Houston Rockets group. Right?
I know. Talking about like setting a record for the tallest lineup out there.
You're talking about Kevin Durant and Jabari Smith as your 2 and your 3, with Steven Adams and Şengün and Amin Thompson, who's 6'7" at the point guard. Like, that's a massive group. And then Jokic and Valanciunas we're talking about playing together, which I think Jokic can play with anybody because he's just like a point god in the center position, and he can just do whatever he wants. But it's just fascinating. We heard Rick Carlisle say it several times last year. When we play bigger, I think we play better. So, Siakam and Turner, like that's not a massive lineup, but there were times last year we saw Jarace and Johnny play together and with a bigger group. So I'll be curious to see how much more teams dive into that, but could there be a case where we maybe see Ijax and Huff play together? Because I think Isaiah Jackson potentially could guard on the wing if necessary for a small stint, or they play a zone defense and kind of lock into that. I just think that there's going to be ways to do that, and another team to keep an eye on for doing that, the Milwaukee Bucks, with Giannis kind of playing some of that point. Maybe they go Portis and Turner out there with Giannis. Like that's huge. So
it is. It really is.
I think that with the center depth, it's just really fascinating, and I know that they probably want to get Wiseman some minutes too. And this is where, they like him, right? They like him enough to bring him back after the Achilles tear, only playing like one quarter. So, they could potentially try to find time for him.
Yeah, and I think it's a good transition into Wiseman. And he talked about it. He's taking it day by day. He said it was 10 months of aggressive rehab. But, like, there was a line that really stood out to me. He said, quote, "It's a blessing to still be in the NBA."
Yes.
And when he said that, like, to me, that felt like that kind of backed up some of what we said recently of like, I feel like this is a guy who kind of knows this might be his last chance. Like this is like the prove it type of year because he knows the injuries that he's had, what he's had to overcome. And, he just talked about like, this is an opportunity he wants to maximize. He wants to play his butt off on a nightly basis, claims that he's in the best shape of his life. And he's been taking everything really serious as it relates to like the weight room and cardio. And I believe it. I believe it. Like he looks like he's in good shape. And anytime that you have a guy that's like fighting for his spot in the league, if you give him a couple minutes, he's going to scratch and claw and give you everything he's got. And I feel like this sounded like a mature James Wiseman. And this is someone who came into the league very early. I believe he had reclassified to go to Memphis early and then was the number 2 pick and then really wasn't playing that much. And I feel like he has had far from the path that he envisioned that he would have going into the NBA. And now I feel like this is a guy who's been humbled and knows that like, hey, any opportunity is a great opportunity and you got to make the most of that opportunity.
Yeah, the one thing I really liked about what Wiseman had to say was he said he was in the best shape of his life and that he used that 10-month rehab process to just focus on that. And I think that all just aligns with what you said about knowing that like it's a blessing to still be in the NBA. Like this was a quote from him. He said he wants to maximize. He said, "I want to maximize my opportunity and play my ass off every day." Like that is something that he is prioritizing because he understands like if I don't do this, I'm not going to be in the league. And like the Pacers have given him a great opportunity here to continue to prolong his career. And it's really going to come down to, can he stay healthy or not? Because I mean, Carlisle did touch on him just briefly yesterday, talked about how he likes his size, how he likes that he's ability to rebound, run the floor. And I just think that for Wiseman, the best thing for him is just being available because we know he's got a lot of size and I'm not overly concerned about, can this guy hit jump shots? Like that's going to be part of it. Like I just want to see him rebound and defend at a high level and do some of that stuff. But what I really love too, we've heard it the last couple of days, so I don't want to like keep beating a dead horse by talking about this thing, but the fact that he was one of the last guys to tap out in their conditioning drills, that to me just spoke volumes of where he's at specifically with his, rehab and where he's at health-wise. So really good for him to see. But overall, I think he just gets it. He said it was all mental. A lot of the rehab was all mental. And he said you have to have the integrity to push through. And he probably said that word 3 or 4 times. And I know when Dustin was asking him the question, it was funny. Before he even answered it, he's like tapping at his head saying it's mental. So this is just a guy like I get why people like him. I feel like he's kind of like this mystery box type thing. You never know what you're going to get, and you never know what you're going to get in a media session with him because he talks well. He doesn't talk a lot though.
I was impressed because, and it's not to say that I set the bar low, but we just didn't really hear from him last year. Given the injury and this, like I didn't know what to expect, and I just kind of like left with feeling like this is probably the most mature that James Wiseman's ever seen, or I left with the impression that this is a guy who's more mature than I thought. And I feel like he just gets just how big of a chance that this is. And I think that when you mention like integrity and mental and everything like that, a lot of guys do tap out during that rehab because they're not themselves. I never believed this, but we saw a quote recently that was like a week ago that apparently Jason Tatum debated retirement or quitting, whatever. No, you didn't. You're owed like $300 million. Like it's going to be tough. You're going to have bad days, but like you just got to keep getting up. And I feel like for James Wiseman, there isn't this $300 million owed to him on a contract. Like there's no commitment at all, really. On the Pacers end, it's a prove it type of year, and this man feels like he's ready to prove it and give it everything he's got.
All right, Facci. Well, let's go ahead and move it forward here with our last player that we really want to touch on, and that's Delon Wright. And I thought there was a lot of interesting things that he had to say after the first day of training camp and just kind of getting a little bit of a backstory on how he found out about this. So he got called last Thursday, which is the same day that we had the Pacers luncheon, and we talked with the media. So he said that he left Friday AM for Indiana. He was golfing while he was getting that call, so I thought that was interesting. A little bit more of I guess a less exciting story than Jay Huff hiding in a pantry, but
yeah, that was very interesting to hear. It really was.
But yeah, so I mean, just really interesting there. And then he felt like his style of play, everyone touching the ball, everyone picking up on defense, was really going to help him. Obviously, played for Rick Carlisle in Dallas for a full season. I think he said it was the bubble year as well, so he knows what it takes to play for Rick. And he's worked with other Pacers staffers in other places. So, I just felt like there was a lot of meat on the bones here for kind of like this could potentially be a good fit. Was there anything else that stood out to you from what he had to say?
He said he loves our style of play. And I thought one thing that was interesting, he said, if everyone touching the ball and playing defense. Okay, so like clearly he knows that ball's going to be spread around, something that every player likes. Also said he's got a lot of familiarity with some players on this team. Pascal Siakam. Quentin Jackson, there was Jay Huff.
Yep.
These are guys that he's played with. He said there was one or two others that he couldn't remember, but Delon Wright's been around. He's kind of been a journeyman. He's played on a lot of teams, so I don't blame him for forgetting for who he played with or where. But there's just a lot of things that he mentioned that he's going to give it all, be a leader, and he said on defense and offense. Maybe he just happened to say it that way, but I liked how he said defense first because like we have guys that could be leaders on offense, like we do, but like sometimes being the last guy, you got to bring it on defense. And I think that one thing that he mentioned about being the last guy, he said as much of a journeyman that he's been, he said he's never been in a situation where there's been 16 players and 15 spots, but he says he's going to give it his all. And I think for this, it's going to be interesting to see like who does get that last spot? Does Tony Bradley keep his guaranteed contract, or does he lose it? Does it go to Delon Wright? Like obviously Delon Wright would be the favorite of anyone who's not signed to a guaranteed deal, with the Pacers. So, he also said, hey, look, I could see myself playing the two alongside, Nembhard or alongside McConnell and anything of that sort. So he could play the one, he could play the two. Obviously, he has familiarity with Rick, like you mentioned. So there's a lot that he's bringing to the table. And in terms of like a third string point guard, I am intrigued. I am.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that he said is that everyone gets an opportunity with this team. So he knows he'll get a shot, which I thought was really just telling. I really was not overly excited about the Delon Wright signing. It was one of those things where it was just like, okay.
I needed something. No.
It's something.
At this point, in the offseason, it was like, Monte Morris, I sold myself on him for like 24 hours. And then it was like, all right, he's gone. Yeah. What else do you got for me?
I will say I like the interchangeability a little bit more than Monte Morris for Delon Wright. And I feel like he's a little bit more defensive minded.
I agree with that.
Brought that up. And I think that the reason he said that is because that's kind of been his calling card. He's always been a defense first guy.
Yeah.
Which is great because it kind of.
He was solid against the Pacers for the Knicks. You got to remember, game 1 and 2, campaign was terrible. Oh, yeah. He was terrible for the Knicks. And when they brought in Delon Wright instead, no, Delon Wright didn't have some big game or anything like that, but he had a good plus minus. And I felt like at times just like didn't do anything to mess up for the Knicks when when Brunson was getting a breather. And I feel like for campaign, that was someone who was like a -9 in like a couple of minutes or anything like that. So Delon Wright in that series, I remember being like, wow, hey, he's still sticking around. And then I kind of left like, hey, he actually provided them pretty good minutes. And, it's no surprise sometimes you see that when you go up against a player like that, you give him a chance, even if it's a small chance.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I want to just read Rick Carlisle's quote quickly. On the addition of Delon Wright, I think he talked about this at Media Day. He said, Delon's a good NBA player, Thought he played well for New York against Indiana in the Eastern Conference Finals, and he seems to be in a good place mentally and physically. Rick said I worked out with him Sunday, or he said yesterday, but I'm paraphrasing here. He said he worked out with him Sunday, and that he feels like our play style suits his abilities quite well. So it could be a match. I definitely think T.J. McConnell also made some comments about Delon maybe getting some moments with this group to run. So that to me kind of like, okay, maybe he is more than likely going to be around for the 15-man roster and their ability to kind of play McConnell with Nembhard together, have two ball handlers out there. It did seem like Rick was kind of hinting at that at Media Day as well, saying like, well, Mathurin and Nesmith aren't initiators, so it'll be more Siakam as that secondary guy. But I think with them talking about DeLon so much, it could potentially be, just that ability to have a third guard in the rotation that can kind of run some of the point or just be a secondary ball handler, which I think DeLon's a better fit at than necessarily being the, initiator of the offense. But other than that, Delon Wright, I'm not really sure what else to say. I just think that it's seems like it makes sense fit wise, and we'll move forward from that. But anything else on that before I kind of close some things out here with what Rick had to say at practice on Wednesday?
No, but I mean, look, we've had the Brad Wanamakers, and the Kiefer Sykes and the limited ceiling type of third string point guard guys that are brought in. Like Delon Wright, to me, far more trustworthy than those guys.
I don't know. Brad Wanamaker was pretty special.
Yeah, I mean, wow, that was really something. It really was an experience. But I feel like for Delon Wright, you don't stick around in the league this long if you don't have something. And I'm looking at it right now. He's been in the league. He's part of the 2015 draft. So he's been in the league for about 10 years. He's played for Toronto, Memphis, Dallas, Detroit, Sacramento, Atlanta, Washington, Miami, Milwaukee, the Knicks, and now potentially the Pacers. Numerous seasons where he's averaged, double digits in this league. Like he's done enough to be able to stick around, and that just shows like he's going to work hard. And I think this is the perfect guy to add to a training camp roster to give him a chance. And sometimes maybe a chance is all he needs.
Don't Stop Believing by Journey feels like the perfect song for him because number one, he's a journeyman, and number two, don't stop believing in your dreams. So we'll see. He came into the draft with T.J. McConnell. That's how long he's been in the league. I think McConnell is technically just a little bit older than him, but they are friends.
He's been playing against McConnell since college. So, I mean, these guys, clearly they know each other. And, Turner, obviously, like I mentioned, is from that 2015 draft class as well. So
I think you're older than both of them, though. I think they're born in 92.
Oh, yeah, no, definitely. So Delon Wright's 33 years old. So obviously
Delon
Turner
and TJ are all the same age.
Yeah, Turner left after his freshman year. So, younger guy didn't have to quite do numerous years in college or anything like that, like some of those other guys. But hey, nonetheless, it's been impressive to see him stick around this long. And at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if he did make the roster. But either way, I don't think we've seen the last of Delon Wright in the NBA.
All right, so just some real quick notes here to close things out here for practice, day 2 for training camp. Rick Carlisle did say that Jarace won the one-on-one drills day 1, and Ben Mathurin won the one-on-one drill for day 2. So that's your 2 lottery picks winning the one-on-one drills. He also said that Pascal's been a big mentor for Jarace and for others, but called Jarace a great student and sponge. Jarace spoke and said that he actually didn't get cleared to play until I believe the beginning of September. So
yeah, I was actually kind of surprised by that. So I heard that soundbite where he started doing the math in his head, like May, June, July, August. It's like, wow, I did not. There was a moment where could Jarace be back in the NBA Finals? I was like, probably not. And then when you hear it took that long, that must have been a way worse injury than we know. But we're obviously glad that he's cleared in time for training camp and preseason and everything with no reservations.
Yeah, I think he was able to still do quite a bit of stuff, just wasn't 100%. So this is like him, a full on 100% ready to go September, but probably 85, 90 in some of those videos we saw with him working out with Pascal. So that was interesting to me. Also thought the last 2 things I'll say here was Carlisle said the first 2 days have been very demanding physically, and he wants guys to come in ready to go for camp and not use training camp to get in shape, which has been the case before plenty of years prior. So that was just interesting. And then the last thing he said is Tony Bradley working on his 3-point shot. The Pacers do the drill where you ring the bell, Facci, right? Have to hit 20 of 25. So there's 5 spots on the court. You shoot 5 threes. If you get 20 to 25, you ring the bell. There's a video from Tuesday's practice. Obi Toppin was the first one to accomplish that. The second one, your 4th-string center, Tony Bradley.
Pretty crazy because, like, I mean, we'd be lying if we said our like first impression that comes to mind of Tony Bradley shooting a 3 was that like horrific brick that hit like the side of the backboard last year. It was so bad. It's hard to forget, but But look, if he went 20 to 25 in practice, there's got to be something there. I think he knows that if you're going to stick around in the league, like you got to add something to your game. Like you can't just be like the dinosaur type center of the past. You got to add some sort of stretching the floor capability, especially with no Myles here anymore. Like there's an opportunity for that, and it's not Ijax's specialty. It's not. It sounds like it is Jay Huff's. Tony Bradley's got to be some sort of blend of in between.
Yeah, for sure. So that is going to wrap it up for today's show. Just remember, it is Thursday, so there is no Pacers practice today. They are taking Thursday off. They'll be back Friday, be off Saturday for Nancy Leonard's funeral, and then be there Sunday for Pacers Fan Jam. So if you're looking for opportunities and you haven't already gotten your tickets for Fan Jam, I don't know if the tickets have gone on sale yet or if they've been available for you to grab them, but hopefully if you can get there and make it, you'll be there. I know that the last couple of years it's sold out very quickly. A lot of people are really excited about going to that event. So be on the lookout for those tickets. And yeah, Facci, that's going to do it for today's show. So if you're hoping that the Pacers continue with this great progress that they've had in training camp on Friday, then hit me with those 3 words.
Let's go, Pacers.